Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Monday, April 18th. Again, the accountability section for today is going to be very brief. I'm still playing Ni no Kuni. Uh, I found a lot of annoying stuff in Ni no Kuni. I should have been playing more Yu-Gi-Oh! Over the weekend, but boy, I just was not interested in doing that. But I tried to do a little bit of it, but I suspect we may not. I may either have to struggle really hard to get all the rewards from this festival, which has only, I think, about 3 days left. Um, uh, and we're back up to nearly 10,000 gems. This is all going to reset in a couple of minutes, anyways, in like 15 minutes or so. Let's go ahead and just receive all of our Duel Pass rewards too. We know the Duel Pass in total only gives you 800 gems, so it's not playing a major factor in these gem rewards. And we still haven't gotten any of the Synchro event packs. So even though there is an exclamation point, it's not something I can access. So let's just hop in. Ni no Kuni is such a bait and switch game. Really, it pretends and looks like it's going to be this Studio Ghibli animation style kids game, competitor to Pokemon, competitor to Kingdom Hearts, but it doesn't know what it's doing, and it didn't think things through, and it probably blew its budget actually hiring Studio Ghibli to do a real small number of flat 2D animations that don't match any of the other 3D cutscenes that you see throughout the game. I am 30 hours in. They have now introduced that there's a casino as a side section. Very noticeably, and anybody who would have done the research knows that the first generation of Pokemon games had a slot machine casino gambling in it, and that created a big controversy, and ever since then there's never been any gambling in Pokemon. So why not learn from that when you make Ni no Kuni years later and say, hey, if this is supposed to be kid friendly, don't put gambling in it. It's not like the Japanese allow kids to gamble either, so it's just kind of ridiculous. On top of which, it has to be pointed out that the dealers that you're playing against when you play the 2 out of the 4 gambling games in this casino are just anime girls with kind of some cleavage and looking older and more voluptuous, and they're dressed up. One's dressed up like a vampire, the other's dressed up like a witch. Because the casino is run by the undead. It's a skeleton guy. And then there's a third hostess type character that has another witch long cut dress that shows the cleavage and all leg. It just is totally out of place for a game where you're playing as a 10-year-old British boy. I thought the game was doing a decent job, but not the best job of not making the 10-year-old companion character Esther be leered at. But even at that, they're not doing the greatest job. She definitely seems to get a few more animation cycles and seems to move around and jump around a lot more than the 2 male companion characters do. The timeline is also a little weird because they're writing it like there's going to be a romantic interest between the older male character and Esther, but Esther is at least 15 years younger than the older male character. At least 15 years younger, because you go back in time and you see the older male character as 15 years in the past, and at that point they look to be both about 10 years old. So you've got, best case scenario, somebody who is probably as young as 25, potentially getting into a romantic relationship with like a 10-year-old. I couldn't imagine Esther is supposed to be much younger than a 10-year-old or much older than a 10-year-old. I'm leaning heavily to thinking both Oliver and Esther are 10-year-olds. But yeah, none of that makes any sense. To throw in a casino, to throw in what look like at least 25-year-old anime women with cleavage. That by far is not really the biggest problem, but it is a indicator of just not a good person in charge of making Ni no Kuni. The biggest problem with Ni no Kuni is that, for me at least, even on easy mode, it's taking too long. I'm 30 hours into it. I could be only a third of the way done with the game. I had to do one side quest to unlock any alchemy formulas at all. So I went from having the ability to do alchemy and being told one formula to then having to do a completely unrelated side quest to get about 15 more formulas. If you didn't do that side quest, or if you chose not to do the side quest, you would totally miss that. And there's a spell that I just got where you can exit a dungeon if you're about to die. And I got that in a completely unrelated side quest. So it does... it just doesn't feel like they thought anything through. You're overwhelmed with system, you're overwhelmed with items, you're overwhelmed with collectibles. I thought I was going to be able to special summon something there. Well, that sucks. You oddly really cannot grind up your characters, because once you become overpowered as a team, the monsters in the overworld run away from you, and so you have to chase after them and waste an extra few seconds every battle chasing after somebody to attack them. They've just now, 30 hours into the game, given me a spell where I can fast travel to locations where I've been before, but it really just shows that we're going to have to run around the world at least 2 times, even if we try to be the most efficient possible. I probably need to reconnect to the idea of just rushing through Ni no Kuni and not trying to do everything. But then there is also the problem that every time I run into a boss fight, they tend to be fairly difficult, like extremely, extremely difficult, even on easy mode, compared to a regular fight. So the whole game just feels unbalanced. Yeah, and there's probably a much longer plethora of complaints that I could certainly make around Ni no Kuni. It's all the little things, it's all the lack of polish, it's all the disconnected systems. It definitely feels like at this point, because it's obviously not a kid's game, they bait and switch you with a lot of stuff. Anytime you see a voice cutscene, that's a voice cutscene that is used in the trailer on the main menu to make you think the whole game is like that. Or at least 80% of all the voice cutscenes are like that. When in reality, the vast majority of the time, you have to just read the text. And I don't know if there really is an RPG game out there that is fully voiced. But that may just be the line in the sand that nobody can afford to cross, and that may be the line in the sand as far as why I shouldn't play RPG games. Even Fallout 3, not all the dialogue is voiced, even though it's easy to forget that, since there is a lot of voice acting. But yeah, because it's not a kid's game, and because it's not really a Ghibli game, it doesn't succeed on the idea of doing a Kingdom Hearts with Ghibli properties, because you're not actually going to the worlds of Ghibli. I imagine not just the studio named Studio Ghibli, but Ghibli the man, the director, the producer, the owner of Ghibli. I imagine he would have never let anybody make a game where you run around those environments and potentially destroy the canon of what is happening in those worlds. Whereas Kingdom Hearts succeeded in convincing Disney to not really care about the canon of their Disney characters in the worlds after the events of their own movies. So Kingdom Hearts allows for that to happen. That had already been fairly established, though, because Disney was fairly willing to make direct-to-DVD sequels to their popular movies and go in different directions and kind of ruin the canon. There's Lilo and Stitch, for instance. There's like several direct-to-DVD sequels to Lilo and Stitch, but the vast majority of people would only go back and watch the first Lilo and Stitch, and not the TV show that was made from it, not the direct-to-DVD movies. I think in Lilo and Stitch's case, there's actually a movie based on the TV show. 101 Dalmatians 2 might fall in that category also, in that I don't know if that many people would have watched the sequel there. So yeah, Disney was never precious about that, whereas Studio Ghibli and Ghibli himself would have been incredibly precious about the worlds he created and the stories he told. Plus, the fandom would be incredibly precious about that. So you would have never succeeded at doing a Kingdom Hearts type of game with the Ghibli universe, even though the Ghibli cinematic universes, which are all separate universes for the most part, there's enough of them and they're popular enough to compete with Disney. They called Studio Ghibli the Disney of Japan, or they called the producer Ghibli the Disney of Japan, or they have called them that in the past. I don't know if that's a moniker used a lot. But what you would have had to have done is you would have had to have pitched the idea that you were going to teleport yourself into an environment that was either frozen in time or completely devoid of people and any indication of like destruction or anything else, anything negative. Like, and they are making I don't know if I talked about this on Monday, they're making a Studio Ghibli immersion park is what I would call it. It doesn't have any rides, so it's not really a theme park as we understand the idea of a theme park, although technically theme park would make some sense. Like it's just going to be a lot of shopping and places where you can be immersed in areas that look like the Ghibli world. You would have to do something like that, where and there could be a way to get around that, certainly, but musical rights would probably have played a big role around trying to make a Kingdom Hearts based on Ghibli properties anyways. Even if you could get Ghibli to give you the rights to all of the visuals, music rights are so crazy in Japan, and licensing is so crazy in Japan, that it almost certainly would have never gone through as far as the music. But yeah, if Oliver, as a wizard, could magically teleport himself into the world of Spirited Away, Porco Rosso, Princess Mononoke, and then maybe just the events of the movies were occurring and you were just having, he was just invisible walking around watching the exact cutscenes from the movies even, uh, the, there might be something to that. uh, Particularly since in Ni no Kuni you're taking pieces of hearts from people, things like enthusiasm, kindness, belief, uh, restraint, just basic virtues or ideas that would be inside of a human heart in this world. If you're just collecting that, I could see teleporting yourself invisibly as a 3D character into a flat 2D world where you are just watching a cutscene from a like important scene from one of the Ghibli movies, and um, yeah. But that's not what Ni no Kuni did, so it doesn't matter. Like me making a better suggestion, even today I still would suspect it would fail miserably if you tried to get Jubilee's art into a Kingdom Hearts style game. And if I was going to try to make a Kingdom Hearts competitor, really sticking to that idea, I would think from a Western perspective, you'd probably want to do something closer to a Mystery Science Theater 3000 idea, where the movies are on the screen and you're just watching them and making fun of them. Getting a bunch of open, free, public domain movies could be interesting, certainly. Or parodying a bunch of movies and drawing your own art style so there's an artistic consistency would make a lot of sense too. See, Disney has pretty much bought out everything, so like, unless you were gonna make something like a Deadpool game where he's jumping between different Marvel DC worlds, that's about as close as I could think as far as an idea from jumping through different cinematic worlds. You might have some small success if you had like Elvira jumping through a bunch of public domain horror movies, or the Universal Monsters trying to get together, going to different universes that way. Universal Monsters could work fairly well if you went to like Transylvania to fight vampire Dracula, and then you went to Egypt to fight the mummy. Things like that would work fairly well. But a lot of those you could just parody or be very generic about and not have to pay that license. Right. Just go ahead and sit this down, face down. I'm wasting a lot of time talking about Ni no Kuni, really, for no reason. Generally, I would get rid of the whole idea of the other worlds, and I would just make a fantasy game that is kind of Harry Potter inspired, with a wizard boy running around going on an adventure. If you told me Ni no Kuni started off as some kind of effort at making a Harry Potter game, I wouldn't be incredibly surprised, even though that would have had to have been something that fell through very early in pre-production. What really strikes me, and I'll wrap up on this, is how much level 5 just does not feel like it has ever made even a standard Japanese RPG before. They just seem so new to it. They don't have even basic improvements that you would expect to see for a game that came out the year Ni no Kuni came out. Let's see. I'm going to categorize this bit of news as, is this a thing still? You can register for PAX XP to unlock a Gabe versus Tycho trophy battle, Arcadia scavenger hunt, automated photo kiosks, prize stations, and more. So there's apparently several things you can do while at PAX. But Gabe versus Tycho as characters is the thing I'm wondering about. Is this a thing? I thought PAX, the Penny Arcade Expo, was pretty much trying to shift away from the Penny Arcade cartoon and the Penny Arcade name. I know there was some small controversy. There's been so many controversies since that it's easily forgotten around Gabe or Tycho. I think it probably boils down to them being comedic comic book writers who are going to have that like frat boy comedy styling, and then potentially getting canceled years later for making dirty jokes, or for still making dirty jokes and frat boy style jokes. That being said, I gave up on reading the Penny Arcade comics many years ago, as it seems like Gabe and Tycho both really had run out of steam as far as having anything to animate or say, and both of them getting fairly old and having kids of their own, which, if you have kids as a creative person, that tends to suck all the creativity out of you and all the extra time and energy you might have. Like, I hate to as bluntly say it, but I think artists should probably be near completely broke, penniless losers that can't get a date and have nothing but free time, particularly when you're talking like writers and animators, because there's just so much of a time commitment there to be a writer and animator, that having a fulfilling life with friends and family and something outside of your work just reduces your production too much. It also reduces your general frustration, and comedy often comes from frustration or pain, and if you're having a good fulfilling life, you tend not to have that frustration and pain to live off of. But I guess Penny Arcade is still a thing. Also, Easter happened, so Dying Light decided to put out this picture to say Happy Easter, Easter egg hunting. Here you can see these are zombie creatures, and there's a bunny with a bow around its head. Like, that almost certainly is the only Easter thing I have seen so far as video game companies, and arguably that's too much anyways. Like, the truth of the matter is, Easter being the most important Christian holiday is not a holiday that you should treat with any level of insincerity or comedy, like Christians, devout Christians, rightfully so, see Easter as a very important thing, and video games companies have nothing to do with Christianity, so they should not say anything. Now, at some point in the future, we may have somebody push a narrative that there's a war on Easter and a war on saying Happy Easter. It would have been fine if they had just said Happy Easter. it's making the custom art. It's taking the piss out of it, for lack of a better phrase. That's the problem. And you probably should just not say anything. Most video game companies in the West and pretty much throughout the world don't say Happy Rosh Hashanah or Happy Jewish New Year or anything like that. They definitely pick and choose, and in picking and choosing, you're creating potential backlash. Video game companies really should just ignore all holidays except for shopping holidays. In all fairness, like Black Friday and even Christmas are more shopping holidays than anything else. Christmas is a Christian holiday, but like the Christmas season or the winter solstice season is much more treated as a shopping holiday than a religious holiday by at least half of the Western society. So yeah, just don't think that's a smart move. Of course, Dying Light 2 at the moment isn't really getting any press, so maybe they thought no good news would be good news. Bad news might be good news, and maybe they were hoping for some small controversy, which I don't think that's going to happen either. We don't really have spring video game sales that are of any big notice. Like Steam doesn't have a spring sale or an Easter sale. There is basically zero video games that have anything to do with Easter. Not even that many games that have bunnies in them. There's already too many holidays in general for shopping. We don't really need another. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle has an update to a previous article. Sonic Origins was raided in South Korea. The update says a new image has reportedly been spotted on the PlayStation's servers. What's interesting here is you have a interlaced image at the top and bottom here and a much better looking image in the middle. So, some kind of stylized choice there. Yeah. It looks like it's gonna be a bundle of the original Sonic games. Maybe ignoring Sonic Spinball. I kind of feel like Sonic Spinball came out before Sonic CD came out. I wouldn't even be surprised if Sonic Spinball came out before Sonic and Knuckles came out. Because Sega CD, I don't think it came out that quickly after Sega Genesis came out. You can definitely see a generational shift in their stylized marketing. The original Sonic here showing off a art style and an artback style very similar to the Master System box art, and then Sonic 2 getting away with that but maintaining the same Sega Genesis branding. And then here we've hit the point where we're hitting the red border Genesis branding on the side, but a kind of dull Genesis, and then here you have a dull gray Genesis versus a bright white Genesis, and then kind of some laziness with just blackness for the most of it. And then you have Sega CD with the blue. There is a lot of history, I guess, there as far as the art styles. Does this guy having his 27? Alright, I'm gonna see if I can do this. 27. Can I equip this to this guy? Yes, I can. Alright. It's kind of confusing trying to play here because he's playing the same strategy that I think I'm playing. And that's creating a confused situation to say the least. Guess best case to do is do that. I don't know if we talked about this from Video Games Chronicles or if we just have some duplicate articles. No More Heroes 3 is coming to PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. The Switch exclusive will be coming to other formats this fall. That is great news. I don't know if there was really a thought that that wouldn't eventually happen. It was really just a matter of time. Apparently, if you get the limited edition box set, you get a probably art book, a record designed to look like the Akira Laserdisc cover, and a fake license plate that says Moe. I guess people forget that he's jokingly, Travis Touchdown is jokingly obsessed with Moe. Although, in all fairness, he also horn dogs on every female he runs into. So he's not exclusive to Moe. Let's do that. Just play cards. Let's see. So that is these new versions will have improved visuals, better frame rates, and faster loading times. And as I understand it, I think the two previous games and the side game probably are on Steam. I don't know if there's really any value in playing the side game. If the two previous games aren't on Steam, that's gonna suck, certainly. At a certain level, too, I just got a Nintendo Switch, and I know I'm never gonna play a Nintendo game on Steam or on PC. Not without just emulating the heck out of a modern Nintendo game. But if games like No More Heroes and Bayonetta are way better playing on Steam, that really is reducing the number of games that I needed to play on the Switch to a kind of significantly small number. Now the good news is Bayonetta 3 is still, well, I don't know how you say this is good news, it's actually terrible news. Bayonetta 3 still, to my knowledge, has not been released. Yeah, I think Nintendo's still sitting on it. So, yeah, I might as well try and play Bayonetta 2, which I've never played on the Switch. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Microsoft is reportedly exploring integrating ads into free-to-play games. This wouldn't be the first time that a game publisher has tried this. It's been done a couple times before. mostly the major backlash. I think it may have been done with Microsoft before in one of the racing games. The problem previously, though, is that it was on billboards in a racing game that you had to pay for, so it was not a free-to-play game to start with. And I just don't know if this is a smart move. Immediately you see here is the Political Action Committee is running ads as an experiment, or they're pretending like that. And here you can see what looks like a movie ad. Microsoft is said to be, quote, moving cautiously with the project, which really just implies that they absolutely plan on doing it. They just want to do it. They want to boil the frog and do it in such a way that that nobody gets too upset about it. I don't know if I could find a way to feel good about integrating ads deeply into a free-to-play game. I run an ad blocker, so obviously I'm 100% against ads, which is a silly thing to say, certainly as a YouTuber, who at some point, if he gets 1,000 subscribers, is going to hope to make a livelihood from ads on YouTube, or from people paying for YouTube Premium or whatever it's called instead. But every free-to-play game I've ever played on a cell phone that was full of ads, it was obnoxious, it was ridiculous. It was not a limited, controlled amount of ads. Even if it felt like it started with a controlled amount of ads, they almost certainly in the first will get greedy and start putting more and more ads in it. Destiny Child, the cell phone game I play, has ads only for itself that I see. I know a way, if you play a different version. I played the tap version, which is slightly more uncensored. If you play the Google Play version, there's a way to specifically say, show me an ad so I can get a free reward for that. But I don't think there are any other ads otherwise in it. I don't think there's banner ads that show up at the bottom, or because that would mess up where your finger positioning would be when you're playing the game. There'd have to be a banner ad there always. Yeah. And in a funny way, Destiny Childs, instead of really having ads and making money off ads, they make money, tons of money, being such a niche adult game. They make a ton of money just asking people to spend a ton of money. They ask you to spend, potentially, you could spend anywhere between $400 and $2,000 every single month in Destiny Child if you wanted to. If you wanted to be a whale and a top tier player, but you don't really have to. Their most recent offering is like spend $30 to get 2 custom skins, or just wait and eventually you'll be able to use the in-game currency, a very large amount of the in-game currency, but still the in-game currency to buy the skins. Like, I could almost see the idea of, if you're going to have billboards in a world and you're going to make a GTA type world where it's realistic, where there were billboards, it might even lean into the realism if the ads were real instead of made up ads. But then what's going to happen is you're going to see the same ads over and over again, and the repetition is going to become a nightmare. And frankly, these should not exist in the real world either. Billboards should be illegal. I don't know how many people are willing to go that far and agree with me on that, but they really should be. advertising at a certain level, I think, should be highly controlled, restricted, and made illegal in a lot of cases. And billboards are limited to some level. Alright, well, let's do this. I don't think there's anything else that I should do. Am I gonna have enough? Oh, it's gonna be everything. Boy, he conceded quick. Yeah, I don't want to go on a big rant about it, but if you haven't heard me say it before, if I haven't made myself clear, there's a big difference between allowing a company to make a product and sell that product to people who need that product, and then allowing corporations in general or companies in general to literally try and brainwash people into thinking they need a product. Tobacco, Coca-Cola, sugar, plenty of other industries out there, certainly. A lot of banking offerings, maybe not necessary. A lot of the education offerings, as far as colleges, not really necessary. But yeah, being bombarded and mentally assaulted by advertising is something that needs to stop. Moving on. Let's see. Video Games Chronicles has an article. Rockstar is looking to have from. Rockstar looks like it has removed some, quote, transphobic content from GTA 5's next-gen release, but the company hasn't commented on the changes spotted by players. Which... Why? I have to ask why. Like, you're playing as a bad guy. Bad guys say inappropriate, rude things. Who are you afraid of offending now that wouldn't have been offended in all the previous versions of Grand Theft Auto 5? Is this literally just trying to retcon things or be a revisionist historian? Or is this Sony or Microsoft coming back and saying, we want you to edit and censor the games more? It would almost certainly have to be Sony. I doubt Microsoft would do that, but maybe they would. Like, this is really boiling down. A lot of these changes feel like they're boiling down to just some middle manager feeling like they have to make some kind of change just so they can justify their own job. But this is historically very bad. Like, at a certain point, we're going to have to make a slippery slope argument where we're going to have versions of Schindler's List where all of the mention of Nazis is removed. Let's see. Going more details, Rockstar seemingly removed several jokes from the games that had been previously deemed by transphobic by the members of the community, what community, and who. So apparently Reddit spotted that something called a Captain Space Toy Interstellar Transgender had previously hung in the office of the arcade, which has been replaced with another action figure. Wouldn't that be a reference to the Rocky Horror Picture Show? Are you literally In the PS4 version, the phrase interchangeable genitalia can be seen at the bottom of the figure. The PS5 version removes the figures and moves other figures, so the removal is less noticeable. Is this literally just a trailer? Yeah, this is just a trailer. This is not a video that shows the changes. Video Games Chronicles has gotten really bad about doing that. Just kind of bait and switching videos. Yeah. So maybe it doesn't quite fall under the category in that case of bad guys saying something bad because it's just a figure on a shelf, but I would assume everybody in the Grand Theft Auto universe are kind of bad, and the general vibe and feeling of the GTA universe is that. It's a small change, but somebody wasted their time doing that, and it's not historically accurate. Rockstar has also disabled several NPCs from spawning outside in certain game areas, such as the drag queen model that would spawn outside cockatoos and in-game club, while the models still exist in the game's director's mode, as pointed out by the prominent Rockstar Games community member Christy Cloud. I don't know why she's prominent. The character's dialogue lines have been removed. Last year, Out Making Games, which is apparently some kind of group I've never even heard of, published an open letter to Rockstar Games asking the developer to reconsider these elements, which have existed since the original release in 2013. So yeah, it seems like publishing an open letter is all it takes to change a very set in stone, very long running, multiple times re-released game that was historically relevant at the very least. And that is just absolutely the wrong attitude I would think that Rockstar should have. This completely shakes the feeling of what kind of game their next GTA is going to be, if their next GTA game even gets made. This is the beginnings of potentially having a GTA announcement that looks a lot like the Saints Row announcement, where it's just woke all over the place. They've made very minimal changes now to test the waters, certainly, but again, you have to make that slippery slope argument. Like, makers of games like Grand Theft Auto knew they were making an offensive game. They were making disgusting art, which is the kind of art that always must be protected, even sometimes from its own creators. And this is a step towards censorship that is not acceptable. And in all honesty, how much of that is really trans erasure versus the elimination of transphobia? Because that can definitely be a difficult line to walk too. Having a action figure that is transgender and then removing it, that's trans erasure. That was an action figure. That was somebody being celebrated. Somebody was being offended. Some known organization of no importance decided to be offended and write an open letter trying to change video games instead of actually affecting the lives of actual transgender people in the real world. So yeah, they're real effective, I'm sure, as an organization. But yeah, an action figure, you can take that as transphobic if you want to, and I think maybe too many people do take too much as that, but that didn't feel like that was really insulting. And now they've been erased. And having transgender cross-dressers, which there's a difference between a cross-dresser and a transgender character, having them no longer spawn in the game, that's trans erasure. That's not eliminating transphobia. I don't know what the lines of dialogue were, but yeah, definitely does not feel like they accomplished something. It doesn't feel like they accomplished something that is actually benefiting the trans community by pushing a video game company to edit something. Like, and I would go as far to even throw people a bone and say, you know, GTA probably does need a list of warnings on the front of its game saying these games are showing disgusting things that we personally don't always agree with, and we're telling a story and this is fiction, and we're not going to censor ourselves, but we will be willing to warn you. We are going to warn you that, wow, uh-oh, that was the audio stutter again. My computer potentially is breaking again. Yeah, and it's not the TV. It's not my third monitor, because that's not messing up, but the frame rate's dropped. It might be the video card. Oh no, this is gonna suck. My computer's just gonna potentially shut off at any point here, and it's just gonna break again. And I was really getting to the point where I thought everything had been fixed, and that I was starting to gain confidence in my computer, and just that one stutter throws me back into suspecting something terrible is about to happen. So if this stream ends, it ends. As for the GTA stuff, yeah, it's from my perspective, it's dumb. It's dumb to go after video games just because you know you can bully video games and video game creators. Why Rockstar, makers of the Grand Theft Auto series, is afraid of controversy when their entire series has been built around creating controversy, I have no idea. That's real insanity, really. They could have easily done nothing, and should have done nothing, and just ignored it. Moving on. After 2 years, Ghost of Tsushima has received its final patch. The team has thanked players for their support of the game, which I guess that means it's as good as it's gonna get. As far as, like, new features, it doesn't, I don't think there's really too many new features being added here as much as just patching. It doesn't really seem like they're adding anything new. And if anything, that might be an indicator of where video games have just gone, in the sense that you shouldn't play any game within the first couple of years of it coming out, because it's potentially, even if it's going to be a big success, it's potentially going to be full of bugs, and you're just better off waiting until you hit that final patch. Normally you don't have a company come out and say, this is our final patch, though. That's a little weird. Most companies pretend like the door is always open to another patch. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Warner Bros. Discovery is reportedly looking to bolster its DC gaming output. The DC universe is set for an internal, quote, overhaul, according to reports. Remember, the last Batman game to come out from Warner Bros. That wasn't like a Lego TT Games Batman game was Batman Arkham City, and that was arguably one of the worst games ever released. I guess the Suicide Squad game, Kill the Justice League, is coming out, but clearly they're going to try and double down on the same thing over and over again. In a lot of ways, Warner Brothers doesn't have anything else to rely on. They really can't do anything with Fantastic Beasts and where to find them as a series. There's too much controversy around that. They really can only do so much as far as Harry Potter. They can do one, maybe two Harry Potter games. And Warner Brothers probably has a lot of like standalone movies that could be turned into games. I wouldn't be surprised if they own the rights to something like The Goonies or something like that, but the vast majority of Warner Brother movies from like the 50s or 60s probably would never work as video games. Anything from the 70s, 80s, or 90s, there's probably only a small handful of them that would make sense. So that they really just don't have anything. Being mostly a movie company, first and foremost, if they hadn't bought DC when it was cheap to buy comic book companies, they would have nothing and would have been out of business at this point. And they can't really do anything. They can't merge with Disney because Disney already owns Marvel. They could try to merge with Sony, but I don't think that would help them much. They're already going through a lot of mergers and separations. So, yeah. All they can do is double down. And I don't know how many DC character games they can really make. They have never shown any real interest, and there's never been any success in making a Flash game. Making an Aquaman game isn't going to really work. Making a Superman game is probably not going to work. Again, maybe you can make it like Deadpool would be Marvel, so I don't know what else you can do. Batman is such a central character around DC Comics. Like half of all comic books are kind of Batman related. So you'd almost have to try and make a Batman game based on every major arc that Batman has ever had at the same time, and that would definitely cannibalize the profits of any one Batman game. You could try to do Green Lantern, but I don't think Green Lantern is going to sell that well. And at a certain point, I don't know where Warner Brothers is going to get the extra staff to make more games. I don't think they were moving particularly slow. If anything, I think part of the failure of Arkham City is that they were moving too fast with the Batman Arkham series, considering how that series really should have been just a standalone game. And even that first Arkham Asylum game had some major problems that they didn't really fix throughout the series, as far as the whole fighting, button mashing combo system. Moving on, the Child of Light creator, Patrick Florday, maybe the P sounds like an F, has left Ubisoft after 19 years. The developer still plans to work with Ubisoft as a consultant. This could be anything. It could be just he's tired of working directly with Ubisoft. It could be that he's retiring. It could be that he's sick or trying to semi-retire. You almost would see that you would want to stay at the company for 20 years, but honestly, if you stay with the company for even 5 years, that's usually enough for most. 15. This does not change, I think, too much. He worked on Child of Light, which was a game that I kind of liked, but it was a little too long. Watch Dogs 2, which is a game I haven't played that I don't think particularly succeeded. And Far Cry 3. This may be more of an indication, really, of a case where the talent at Ubisoft may be leaving Ubisoft slowly but surely to form a new company, since there's enough bad press around Ubisoft and a lot of attacks from the French press against Ubisoft and a lot of like union fighting happening at Ubisoft. It may be that Ubisoft just stopped being the place where people wanted to go to work every day, and a way to get around that certainly would be to the idea may be to rebuild Ubisoft much in the same way that THQ Nordic is rebuilding THQ by getting rid of the problematic elements and the legal liability and just reforming yourself later. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says PSVR's latest exclusive looks like it had a disappointing release. A PlayStation Network tracking site suggested Moss 2 has attracted an extremely low number of players. I honestly couldn't have even told you that it had come out. I knew Moss Book 2 was announced, but I didn't hear anything about it. This is definitely the problem with VR, particularly a consoles VR like PlayStation VR, in that very few people, I suspect, have that or would even pull it out of their storage cubbies if they did have a PlayStation VR, because the overlap of people who would have gotten a PlayStation 5 to replace a PlayStation 4 and the people who would have bought a PlayStation VR for a PlayStation 4, I bet there's significant overlap there. So much so that people who would have kept the PSVR probably got rid of their PSVRs or sold their PS4s or put it in a different room where they're not day-to-day looking at it. And so there very possibly are a lot of PlayStation VRs in the attics of people who have PlayStation 5s now. And I think you can do PlayStation VR on the PlayStation 5, but I bet the vast majority of people haven't hooked that up. There is also a pretty big overlap, I suspect, for people who would have jumped from PlayStation 4 and PlayStation VR to just a computer VR, Oculus or something, because it's roughly in that same category of expense. If you can spend an extra $500 to get a PlayStation 5, then you probably can also afford to spend an extra $500 to get a Oculus Rift in a PC. At least the differences get smaller as the next generation of consoles get more expensive and PC prices stay about the same. Moving on. Video Games Chronicle says new Pokemon games info could be coming next week. A Japanese TV show appears to promise new info on an upcoming video game. Which, I don't know if Japanese TV shows really would break that kind of news. I've never heard of a Japanese TV show announcing anything like that before. In fact, my understanding is that very few people in Japan actually watch Japanese TV, and it's much closer to something like PBS, where it's the niche audience that watches TV in Japan. So that'll be surprising, or that'll be informative to me if all of a sudden we start to see announcements happen on Japanese TV shows. I probably lost here. 3,500. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Blizzard is pulling interest in NFTs and play-to-earn games. The update here says the president of Blizzard won't launch NFTs, which says Blizzards won't launch NFTs, which, no duh, like, it's kind of crazy to even show interest in that right now while you're trying to be acquired, because that almost certainly will be used against you in the future as an excuse to not allow for or to try to block the acquisition by Microsoft of Activision Blizzard. Maybe Blizzard's president, instead of Activision Blizzard's over management, is trying to sabotage the deal. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some middle managers that realize it's probably not going to be good for them if this acquisition goes through, and are trying to sabotage the deal. Regardless, I suppose you take that as good news. Anyways. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Square Enix president has reiterated the desire to make play-to-earn blockchain games. Matsuda has previously criticized for publicly committing to polarizing tech trends. Another thing he said, possibly in the same Yahoo Japan interview, is that Square Enix and Eastern Japanese game developers are not going to succeed copying Western game developers, which is actually a good thing to certainly say, although coming out of the mouths of Square Enix management, it's probably not something that I particularly believe too much, because Square Enix in particular has really failed to succeed being a somewhat Japanese-centric development company, and every time they act as a publisher for a Western game, it sells better than their own Final Fantasy games, and yet they pretend like it doesn't, and they pretend like they're disappointed. There's just a level of insanity, stupidity, and like attempt at saving face amongst some Japanese people and Japanese in general, where they just refuse to admit they're wrong. They have to save face at all times. They demand other people claim they are wrong just because they see themselves at a higher status. The emperor is never wrong. It is always the people below the emperor that are wrong. They must apologize when the emperor makes a mistake. That type of thought. And there's just this whole social structure where, which is just toxic, and an inability to admit what they're doing is wrong has hurt Japan, I think, in general, but in video games too. Square Enix, I think, is a prime example of that. That they cannot admit to themselves that they are either underfunding or in some other way undersupporting the successful Western games, and they are underpraising for sure the successful Western games, while they are overfunding and oversupporting the games that are not succeeding as much as they need to. You can't say Final Fantasy is a total failure, but as with every new iteration of Final Fantasy games that comes out, it feels more like people feel obliged to play a Final Fantasy game in Japan than they want to play a Final Fantasy game. Plus, Square Enix is just not really innovating. It's putting all of its eggs in one basket with the Final Fantasy series. I can't really name another Square Enix series that that is even in existence. Like, yeah, I cannot even name a single other Square Enix series, which there undoubtedly has to be something. Alright, let's see if this works. Well, so far so good, I guess, about computers stuttering, but the stuttering and staggering there, why would it go away for nearly a month? That's the question. What's the deal there? Like, why does it only happen after a while? Just go and activate that. Speaking of Square Enix and its failures, in part, also Platinum Online's, Babylon Fall has dropped to less than 10 concurrent players this week. I think it went down to 0. I mean, not 0, 8. I guess we want to click no here. So yeah, like it is kind of a catch-22 argument to say they're not innovating, and then when they did innovate with Babylon's Fall, nobody liked it. But at a certain level, they didn't support Babylon's Fall at all. Yep, it dropped briefly to just 8 users, according to, I assume this is SteamDB. Yeah, so suffice it to say, when the only news about Babylon's Fall there's to say is how bad it is and how few people are playing, your game has failed miserably. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles, we have about 5 more articles. Microsoft is giving free PC Game Pass trials to non-members who play Halo, Forza, or Age of Empires 4. Even those who played Halo's free-to-play multiplayer are eligible. So they are definitely trying to get more people on there. And then this is just like that same video. Man. At this point, I may start to think about just blocking videos on Video Games Chronicles if all the videos they show are irrelevant, barely connected, barely unconnected films or trailers. Do we want to do that? I guess if I can maintain getting surrenders, we can make progress. I feel like I probably don't have anywhere near all the normal cards, but I feel like I kind of have all the normal cards. Remember, we want to get this to 2200, so even getting halfway there, it's not super useful. Like, we have 3 days in which I need to just play this non-stop. Unless I get a lot of victories. Portal's Rydo says he wants to start Portal 3 because he's, quote, not getting any younger. Eric Wolpaw co-wrote the previous 2 Portal games. Nothing really stops him from actually writing the stories, regardless of whether or not he's even getting paid by Valve to write it. He may have better things to do with his time than work for free and write a speculation script of Portal 3. I don't believe there's really any case where Valve is going to make a Portal 3 until they can put something out that they call Half-Life 3. It would be interesting if they did pull the trigger and just make a Portal 3. But Valve wants to see new innovation, something new, something different with all of its products. And unless they make a Portal 3 that's specifically made for the Steam Deck, which maybe they could do that, they're going to not be that interested because of that. They're not going to be interested if it's just more of the same. And honestly, without really good writing, more of the same of Portal isn't going to be that interesting, even to me as a major fan of Portal. I think I'm going to have to run to the bathroom for like 20 minutes. And the fear certainly is I could pause this recording, but who knows if I come back and the computer's not broken. But I have no choice, I suppose. Video Games Chronicle says Microsoft hasn't discussed Bobby Kodak's post-acquisition employment status, which, yeah, I suppose they aren't going to discuss anything like that and make any paperwork. There's really no reason to have that conversation now when you can just let whoever's in charge, which it would be Major Nelson, make their decisions later. Know in their heart what they're going to do and just announce what they're going to do. I don't feel like there's a real reason to make discussions until the acquisitions are full or all the way through. Moving on, Shin Megami Tensei 5 has sold over 1 million copies. The Switch exclusive was released in November. I didn't realize there was a Switch exclusive. I guess it was. A fan-made Metroid Prime remaster mod lets you play in 4K 60 with new textures and lighting. I assume you still would get DMCA taken down, though. Like, even if the mod is requiring you to rip a legitimate Metroid Prime disc, I assume Nintendo still would claim ownership and copyright. Interesting, this trailer doesn't want to load. Yep. Even on Video Games Chronicle's own internal player, the video's not Yeah. Yeah, do I want to tribute something? No. Once again, that's kind of a great example where if Nintendo just worked with the modders, they could be putting out great PC remasters of their old games, and maybe in some weird way they might create a secondary market where let's see. Yeah, they might create a secondary market where you could sell your old games on PC and sell your new games on the Switch. Gain 500, lose 500. I was trying to see if activating either one of these would actively let me change it and move the attachments, but no such luck. Moving on, we had already talked about this, but Video Games Chronicle says the Square Enix president says Japanese studios shouldn't try to emulate Western developers. Matsuda says the world recognizes and appreciates Japanese games. Yeah. At a certain level, I think there's some truth to that. I just don't think that really applies to Square Enix games so much. And in a lot of ways, this is just Matsuda doubling down on his own Japan first style of running Square Enix. Nippon Ichi style of doing business, I suppose. Let's see where we are on rewards. Well, for these extra rewards, I think we have a decent chance at getting some of this, but not all of this. Like, I'm halfway through as far as the amount of damage to the life points, because there's a considerable amount of people who are just surrendering. Same is true for monsters on the field that need to be destroyed. It's just like, it's hard to make progress on these if all of your winning is by people surrendering. Also, we're making some more progress on the overall challenges. 5 more ranked duels will get me up to that point. As far as the unlimited. Alright. So, what I think we can do here is I will, since it's a new day and we need to spectate, I'm going to, hopefully without anything breaking, start this, pause the recording, run to the bathroom, mute myself while I run to the bathroom, and so people can watch this. It won't be in the recording as far as the spectate, and then I'll start recording again. Live stream people will just have to probably wait. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. Well, that seemed to have worked. At least I did not come back to the computer completely broken. That being said, I'm gonna have to change the, let's see. Ooh, why is this such a low resolution? What if I was to do this and then do this instead and go into windowed mode? I was doing lower resolutions because I wanted to read the cards. My auto load program I have on my phone to load into Yu-Gi-Oh! Obviously, I need to tell to not do that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Otherwise, it is going to log me out. And yeah, being at different resolutions, I don't know if that really changes anything here as far as settings. Like card size, large, seems to be the same. Yeah. So maybe this is what the problem has been. I don't know why that would be what the problem has been, though. It's just not been at 1080p, and thus my graphics card, which should be totally capable of handling converting 720p to 1080p, was sometimes stuttering. Plus, it's the audio and the video that's stuttering, which really gets back to the idea of it either being a problem with the CPU or the motherboard itself not providing power. It gets really hard to potentially blame stuttering on my GPU, my graphics card, when when the audio is not even going through the graphics card. But anything could be the problem, certainly. And if we were going to go down on the chain of things, if I had a monitor that was breaking the graphics card because the monitor was broken, it might be that they mutually broke each other, and that my potentially short-circuiting monitor short-circuited my 2080, which would suck, certainly, to try and replace that, but that may be the case. Let's not fall deep into the realm of boundless and infinite speculation, though. We changed something here. We can hope that was a fluke. We can hope that my computer isn't just going to randomly shut off at some point and the RAM's going to be short-circuited. Yeah, getting back to the video game news and playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Let's focus in on that. Sorry for taking a break in the middle of that. That unfortunately happens. And I don't really have a way to stop it from happening. Start with that one, I guess. Then that would let me go to 25. I guess we'll do this. Go to 3,000. Yeah, I need to get back to talking here. Oddly, I decided to brush my teeth, just give it an extra scrub, and whenever I do that, that tends to distract me from actually talking. Let's see. Moving on. Last Video Games Chronicles article for today. Returnal's director says Housemarque could always do more to make games more accessible, which is probably true statement. You can always try to do more, and like, it's hard to mathematically and scientifically prove that you've done as much as you can. Although the sentiment is probably coming from a good place. It probably is also a waste of Housemarque's time. If they tried to make Returnal, for instance, more accessible so more people could play it, that would change the type of game they were trying to make. Whether the type of the game they ended up making was good is certainly a matter of opinion, but they wanted it to be really hard, and making it easier, which is what they really mean when they say accessible almost always, would have probably hurt their artistic vision. And I'd rather prefer them to stick to an artistic vision than to kowtow towards just selling a few more copies, which would be the other option, certainly, is that they would have made Returnal too easy to sell more copies. But if they, like, ironically, I kind of would agree with Returnal being easy, or like every single bit of advertisement around the idea of Returnal being hard turned me off from the idea of ever wanting to play Returnal, and I never saw any gameplay, any trailer, anything at all that made me want to play Returnal after I had made that initial determination that it was going to probably be too hard for me. Now, if they don't actually mean difficulty, and instead what they really mean is accessibility, I mean, at a certain level there is really only so much you can do. Like, you can either make the game play for yourself, play automatically, or you just have to expect people to be able to press the buttons in a reasonable amount of time, with a reasonable amount of pressure, with a reasonable amount of skill. Look at something like ATMs. Yeah, in a lot of ways, I guess that is probably a good comparison as far as accessibility. ATMs do not have colorblind modes, for the most part, as far as I know. You just have to be able to read the screen to some level. ATMs have number buttons that you have to press, or touch screens that you have to press. They do have a plug out for people who are hard of hearing or maybe even blind. I don't know if the audio phones actually read what's being said or not. There is a level of assistance that people over the decades have designed for people who are blind. But we don't design ATMs for people who have no fingers. We don't design ATMs for people who are quadriplegics and literally cannot press buttons. And while games are an entertainment and it would be nice if they could be that accessible, it feels often like they are wasting their energy and making worse games in favor of just winning woke points to make a game accessible. Like, at a certain point they have to realize and admit that quadriplegics who can't press buttons are not ever going to be the target market, and can't be the target market for video games. And yeah, that sucks. Yeah, it's not fair, but it's just reality. And inherently, a lot of these talking points that get brought up over and over again, such as accessibility, are being made by people who either never had a connection to reality in the first place, or people who are actively trying to deny reality and change it in a fictional video game worlds because they can't change it in the real world. Which, every time I have to go against some of this woke stuff that is becoming ever more prevalent amongst video game designers, it just pushes me in a very uncomfortable position in which I come off as like I am particularly conservative when I really am not at all. But yeah, woke and social justice warriors have just stolen the narrative and stolen the movement as far as making real progress. If they wanted to go and do something for Returnal and improve Returnal, first thing would be to make he does say the gameplay challenge and narrative of Returnal are inseparable. If we're gonna try and get more people capable of playing it, you might have a male character go in the opposite direction for the small percentage of people who won't play as a female character. You might have less blood and gore options. An easy mode in general would be obvious. But I don't know what else more you can change. Since Returnal is a very personal story of this person, even if it is arguably not a very good story, there's not a lot you can change that isn't just straight up hurting the narrative of the game. In a lot of ways, Returnal shouldn't have been a video game in the first place. It should have been a movie. Because that's the kind of experience they're trying to give you. Let's see. See if this works. In a lot of ways, that may be the better solution to a lot of these accessibility things, ideas anyways, is that very possibly it should be a case where instead of trying to make video games more accessible, you should potentially just make a movie version of your video games. And we see that with some successful games like Last of Us. Like Last of Us and Halo. But then when they do make Last of Us and Halo movies or TV series, they don't try to tell the real story that was written by the game writers. They try to use the name to tell a different story. I've very much wanted to see companies start to make abridged forms of their video games. Even if it's just going to be putting cutscenes on YouTube and in the same way that there are YouTubers out there that make anime abridged series where they take out just the important cutscenes and the important sections. Although most of the time when something's abridged, they also do it in kind of a comedic way, which is not what I would want to see for video games. But yeah, if Nintendo took all the important cutscenes out of Breath of the Wild and put it on their YouTube channel, and then people who couldn't play Breath of the Wild could just watch all the cutscenes and have that abridged experience, that would be way more accessible than trying to program any kind of change in Breath of the Wild to make it easier to play. Just take the interactivity completely out. Inherently, that is where accessibility has to go, is that you have to remove as much interactivity as possible and stop a video game from being a video game. Let's see. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called PP Is You, trying to, I suppose, be name confusion with Baba Is You. That being said, I don't think too many people would be confused with this garbage Chinese game. So obviously that's no. MGS Stream Games looks like a garbage asset flip, which we'll say no to. Dummy Nation looks like it is a strategy game that's already mixed, so we can say no to that. Astrocat Milky Way Journey looks like it is a kind of jigsaw puzzle game. Looks fine for a single screen game, but certainly not something I'd actually spend any energy thinking about playing myself. It's a little too small for something on Steam, but Steam is allowing basically everything on their system. We have one that's being published by Breda University of Applied Science, so this might be a student project. Alien Removal Division, ARD. I think there's something in schools called ARDs. I don't know what they are, what it stands for too. Maybe some discipline meeting or something. Initialisms exist everywhere. I'm sure plenty of schools have different initialisms that mean different things. Let's see. Early access free. This game is single player English. Well, if this is a student project, they're not saying that it's a student project. If it was a student, oh yeah, it does say here, made by the students of Breda University. I've never heard of Breda University. It looks fine. I'll put it on the follow list. I don't know if I'm ever actually going to get to a point though where I actually am going to try to cover that was the worst card to buried. Yeah, I really doubt, with all the trouble I've been having with my PC, with just being eternally behind in making content, I doubt I will find any extra time. I'm already spending extra time playing a Japanese RPG just to relearn that I can't play JRPGs because they take too long, or RPGs in general usually take too long. Let's see, moving on, we have Capture Creatures, which is a Pokemon / card battler game, it looks like. Pokemon clone. Yeah, it's not visually polished quite enough to take you on the level of journey you would expect to go here. English $3.99. Yeah. I'd assume that there's at least 50 characters that you'd really want to pay attention to and see, and the art is going to have to just be really good in the case of a game like this, where when you see these monsters and it just kind of isn't. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Siren's Call, which looks like it's a visual novel. They're calling it a friendship simulator. Is this the... It's interesting that there's a warning here at the beginning of it. I wonder if this is perhaps the step that people are going to go through, where they're going to take visual novel dating sims and just call them friendship simulators in an effort to not get blocked from being released on Steam. The only thing I could do is summon this, and hope this works. And then they're selling a fan pack here for $9.99. Overall, doesn't look like there's a real game as far as showing any adult content, although there is apparently suicide, self-harm, emotional assault, sexual assault, autism spectrum disorder. I wonder if this is, as silly as this might sound, I wonder if this is maybe calling somebody out. There's a couple of YouTube type personalities or internet type personalities who are just, like, for lack of a better term, total trash fires in their lifestyle. And if you were to make a visual novel based on one of those trash fires and their many long-running dramas, then you could effectively slander somebody, but you'd have to spend a lot of effort to slander somebody for really no good reason. Like if you were going to make a visual novel based on the guy who created Sonichu and the trash fires and dramas around him, or any other long list of people that I could probably pull up. Just go down the list of the Encyclopedia Dramatica and pick a person. You could make a weird story involving them, certainly. I don't know why you'd do that, though. I don't know why you'd make a free visual novel in the first place, other than hoping you can get enough other trolls, if that is what they're doing. And I'm just speculating. I'm not saying that's what that game was. I'm just saying, if you were to make a troll game where you were calling somebody out as a visual novel and release it for free, you would then have to hope that there are just enough trolls out there that would support your project so that you could profit in some way. Unless you're just doing it all for the drama yourself, which is very believable too. Anyways, moving on, we have a game on Steam called Pogo Stick Mayun, which, okay, it's just a jumping pogo stick game. There's nothing particularly interesting about it. Here we have Melon Dusk, which is all obviously a parody of Elon Musk and an asset flip garbage game. Yep. At least in this case, it's very obvious they are making fun of Elon Musk and going for a meme. Here we have something called the D Team, which looks like a tank asset flip garbage game. $9.99, English only. You know what? I need to stop calling them garbage games, not because they're not garbage games, just because it would save me breath. I can just call them asset flip games, and that practically means the same anyways. On Your Hands looks like a low polygon game. I'm not sure there really are flipping assets on this one, but doesn't look good. $5.99 English only. Here we have a JRPG called The Heart of Darkness. Looks like an RPG Maker game. What kind of sucks is I easily could be wrong, but some of these RPG Maker games feel like they might be more optimized than Ni no Kuni 2. Just in the sense that if you only have attack, skill, and evade, instead of having attack, spells, tactics, select a familiar to fight for you, use your familiar special tricks and attacks. Like when you just having a more simplistic NES, Super NES style RPG could speed up the process quite a bit. Particularly if you know you just need to mash attack over and over again and you don't have to do anything else. That being said, Heart of Darkness, being even very positively reviewed, is nowhere close to the type of game I would say yes to. I am, for lack of a better term, a visual whore, in that I only want to play games that are very, very pretty, which means most of the time they need to be either 3D and pretty good looking or 2D and looking great. And honestly, for JRPGs, that might be very much a mistake. I probably should lower my standards on the visuals in favor of games that have better story and play better. This guy's taking forever. Here we have a game on Steam called Assault Bots, which looks like you're controlling several different kinds of drones and walking tanks and robots you can build. It doesn't look quite polished enough to catch my attention, so nope to that. Here we have 100 Worlds escape room game, which looks like a kid-friendly escape the world, escape the room adventure game. Let's see, $8.99, English only. Has this developer made anything else? 100 Doors Escape from Work, Doodle Art, LGBT, color by nature for... Yep. It looks to me like they are targeting kids games, and some of these games are pretty well received. That being said, I don't think I need to put this on the follow list, because yeah, I'm not really looking to play that type of game. Here we have a game on Steam called Song of Souls, which looks like it's a Dark Souls clone Chinese game being tagged as a Souls-like. I don't think it supports English, really. English, it says it does, English and Chinese, but I suspect the translation will be rough, to say the least. And looking up at the heads-up display, I don't believe that there's much of a gameplay mechanic here. I believe everything you're seeing in this trailer is probably everything the game has to offer. Whereas the actual game Dark Souls probably has a trailer that shows you very little of what you can actually do throughout the entirety of the experience. Here we have a game on Steam just called Hee Hee, which looks like a very poorly animated platformer. We don't really have a ton of news today. Here we have a Chinese game that looks like nothing but background screenshots. Talk about getting really lazy at this point for $1.99. Here we have a game called Severance, which is an RPG game, RPG Maker looking game. Not widescreen. Again, nope to that. Yep. Today's stream actually may not be that long, considering I took a break in between, in the middle of it. Which I kind of need that to happen though, because if my computer is going to break, it is a race against time to end the stream if we can. But, you know, if it just stuttered every now and then and never got any worse, I would be not happy about that, but I'd be willing to compromise and live with that. I would really like to know where the stuttering was coming from, but if it were just like a Windows 10 update or something, there's just some weirdness happening, or if it had to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel being poorly programmed, which is believable, I'd be happy with that. Let's see. If I could destroy this card, I might be able to win. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Sporty Peppers, which looks like it's trying to be a Wii Sports clone. It shows you moving your body, and I don't know how they would get the input from moving your body, whether it's a camera or a cell phone with a shock sensor inside of it. Regardless, the games don't really look good, so Sporty Peppers is going to be a no. Everything's going to be a no today. Here we have a top-down twin-stick shooter, it looks like. We're calling it an action roguelike also. And it's not visually polished enough. So that's going to be a no. $6.99 English. Here we have something called Airborne. It's another paper plane flying asset flip game. Or at least it looks like an asset flip. It may not actually be one. Here we have Puzzle Natures. We're seeing fewer puzzle games these days, which is probably a good thing, but it's not fixing the overall percentage of garbage games. $6.59 for a puzzle game is definitely a no. Block Breaker looks like it's a physics game. Physics puzzle game. It is kind of visually polished, a little bit better than average, but you literally, I think, just stay in this one area and play with the physics of the blocks, and I don't think you do anything else. $6.59 English and Russian. $6.59 seems like it might become a new $9.99 for a lot of games. And it definitely does feel like no further steps are going to be taken to stop Russian language games from being listed on Steam. Theoretically, a Russian language game would have to have their bank accounts and their business accounts in their headquarters outside of Russia. But I don't think we'll get any more on that. We are, as far as the Ukrainian invasion by Russia, it is now just going to, I think, be an attempt at a long-term occupation unless Russia decides to pull out. We may be seeing Russia's Desert Storm or Russia's Iraq in a lot of ways. And they may just continuously try to maintain some level of presence in Ukraine for decades, unless something else happens, of course. I guess that's always a possibility. Here we have a game called Irritability and Mood Swings. As far as business is not doing business with Russia, I imagine. there will be sanction limitations for a very long time. Very, very long time. And there probably will be some lasting negative sentiment around Russian businesses for a very long time too. I'm sure there's still people that are upset with Russia from the Soviet Cold War era, Soviet Union times. So, as many people are still who would have been alive back in those days who are still upset, there may be that many people holding those kinds of grudges for that long of a time. Perhaps justifiably so, since it doesn't seem like much changed. Hey, we finally got some Synchro reward tickets. Like, it's been a long struggle to get to that point. We should open some, but I kind of would like to open them in packs of 10. I don't think it matters. We should open at least one at the end of this stream. As for this game, irritability and mood swings, this feels too much like an asset flip horror game instead of a real horror game. There's just a lot of empty rooms that they're showing me here. $1.99 English only. Here we have Just a Ball Jumping in Space, which looks like garbage, which is $3.59 English, allegedly full audio. Yeah, right. And then we have the Ditty of Carmina, which looks awful, for $8.49. Wow, the worse the games look, the more expensive they're getting. English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a ball bouncing game that maybe is music rhythm based, but that's not going to fix too much. I could almost see the idea of playing a game that was rhythm based so you could see a really cool amount of actions, but honestly I'd prefer something like Bayonetta to be rhythm based if you were going to do something like that, where you could just press the button on the beat and then Bayonetta would do a massively cool attack sequence. I wouldn't want to see just a ball bouncing. You can only do so much to make a ball bouncing look cool. I would prefer just to directly control the ball bouncing. Alright, let's go through the Gamatsu news. A Light Fairy Tale Episode 1 is coming to the Switch on April 28th. I think we may have already talked about that. This Light Fairy Tale looking like a JRPG, looking pretty poorly animated in the actual gameplay, kind of a soft claymation look to it, and then having a very different intro art style and a very different cover art style, which really just screams inconsistency. As one of the things I was definitely not expecting from Ni no Kuni is that there would have been like 4 different ways in which cutscenes might be presented to you, in that sometimes you have a cutscene and you can control the camera in the 3D art style. Sometimes you have a cutscene and you can't control the camera in the 3D art style. Sometimes they're talking and they have voice lines of dialogue in the 3D art style. Sometimes they have the Ghibli 2D art style in their voice, but you can't control the camera, obviously, because that's a 2D cutscene. And sometimes it's 3D art style and no text. So, and often these different types of cutscenes are put back to back next to each other. It just screams to me that they ran out of budget fairly quickly in the development of the game. Like, Moving on, a side-scrolling adventure game, Haiku the Robot, for PC launches April 28th. Haiku being... what kind of game is it? Side-scrolling Metroidvania. So having the name Haiku doesn't seem like it's going to have too much to do with the gameplay style. Yep, it definitely looks like a Metroidvania game. What's funny is you could easily make a Metroidvania and have the exact same rooms and placement and layout of Metroid 1 or Super Metroid. Like, you could totally do that. And maybe Nintendo would try and sue you, but I'm not sure that they would even bother or even notice. That might be a little annoying. Although I don't know if it would be that annoying, because if you did do something like that, then in PC you could, if you did just make a clone like that, then you could have a PC version of Metroid with just a different skin on it, which that might actually sell. Although I don't even know if people really want to play the original Metroid game versus Super Metroid. And I feel like I'm getting tired and I'm going to start rambling here in a second. Moving on. We had already talked about this from Video Games Chronicles, but Gematsu has it too. No More Heroes 3 is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC this fall. Now with higher definition graphics, improved frame rates, and faster load times. And yeah, they don't really have anything else to say because that was just a press release. Gmod Archives Plus, Megami Tensei Gaiden, Shinyaku Last Bible announced for Switch. Gaiden Games apparently means it's a spin-off game that's not part of the canon, but Gaiden also might indicate that there's a Gaiden character, so I don't know if this is part of the Shin Megami Tensei series or not. I would suspect it might be. It says yes, Megami Tensei Gaiden Shinyaku is a spin-off of the Megami Tensei series and first launched for feature phones on September 2007 in Japan. Gmod is the company putting out all the whole Japanese cell phone games. To summon it's not doing anything helpful. Moving on, Gematsu says Grand Blue Fantasy Versus version 2.80 or 2.80 update adds 3 new actions. A playable character survey results have been announced. Sandalphon has been the most requested character worldwide. Don't even know if Grand Blue Fantasy though is a PC game versus a cell phone game. Actually, I don't even know if it's a fighting game versus a RPG game. The problem is there's 2 or 3 games that have names very similar to Grand Blue Fantasy, Phantasy Star Online, and something else. Yeah, they're saying it's a fighting action RPG game, so I would lead to believe it is a fighting game more than just an RPG game. There might be even something more special about it, where it is kind of a hybrid of an idea of a game. I'm wondering where all my hard drive space went too. Yeah, I guess I did enough recordings yesterday that I have only about 20 gigabytes left. That's fine. I can clean up the scratch drive, which I record everything to. I do have a potential thought that maybe either my OS drive or my scratch drive is having trouble, and that might be the source of the stuttering too. Oh, well, are we gonna do anything? Yep, this is not going to win. Alright, let's move on. Gamatsu article says Lego Builder's Journey is coming to the PS5 and PS4 on April 19th. It includes a newly released creative mode. This Lego game is probably going to get forgotten, even though it is the most unique of the Lego games. I just don't know how you could continue down that path and make more of the same thing. Yeah, and I haven't even played Lego Builder's Journey, but I imagine it has a complete narrative, and once that narrative ends, it would be hard to make more levels or make more of a story. Despite the fact that Lego is supposed to be this open-ended thing that you could do all kinds of things with, it's still kind of limiting compared to other video game art styles. I need, I suppose, 20 more victories. If you get 500 every victory, and I need 10,000 more points. In the next 3 days, I need to get 20 more victories, and I kind of do want that flare. But this also goes to show that if I continue to commit this much effort and time to Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Master Duel, I'm going right back down that path in which Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering at times would just suck up all of my free time, and I wouldn't be able to pre-record any footage, which I would much prefer to play other games and have a variety of games, regardless of whether people are actually watching them or not. Honestly, if I was trying to run a business here instead of just trying to do what I think is artistically smarter or do things that I want to do, I would just be like every other YouTuber, just clickbaiting and moving towards the most recent fads. But I don't want to do that. At a certain point, if you do that, you might as well just get a job outside of YouTube, and you'll make more money and succeed. You're more likely to succeed that way. Moving on, Gamatsu As an article, Shin Megami Tensei 5 shipments and digital sales have topped 1 million. We had already talked about that. It really is getting to the point where Video Games Chronicles is almost one for one copying the news articles from Gamatsu. Whereas they were being a little bit more selective, I feel like, in the past. Death Smiles 1 and 2 for PC launches June 23rd. This is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up game. Even though it kind of sounds like it would be a fighting game. They have this week's Japanese game releases. Hyper Dimension, Neptunia Sister vs. Sisters, E-Powerful Pro Baseball, and more. Let's see. Games coming out in Japan, though, kind of don't matter. It's the sales numbers that are more important. Digimon Survive is going to launch July 28th in Japan. The release date has finally been set for the Digimon strategy RPG game. This is an interesting point, certainly, to point out too. The Digimon characters and kids have grown up over the years with the fandom of Digimon. So if you were somewhere near the target age of a Digimon anime when it first came out, you are still within the target age of who they're trying to sell to, and the characters reflect that, which is an interesting idea compared to, say, Ash Ketchum, who is eternally 10 years old. And certainly that would have been something Ni no Kuni probably would have been better at targeting too, is to have Oliver grow up and be closer to a 15-year-old, like, young teenager, but not particularly angsty teenager, although his mother died at the beginning of the game, so he kind of has every right to be an angsty teenager. But yeah, if they had gone more down that rate, the idea of having a casino and gambling is a little less objectionable, and having Ni no Kuni just be a more difficult, more complicated game than you would expect it to be would make sense. So, to not continue to rant about Ni no Kuni, I would expect Digimon Survive to potentially be more complicated of a RPG type experience, turn-based RPG, strategy RPG game. I don't feel like Digimon went anywhere as deep down the well with having different variations of their Digimon. I wouldn't be surprised if there's about 300 Digimon in existence, where there's about 800 Pokemon in existence at this point. I definitely would like to see Digimon Survive be a single player game. If they try to have online elements, that's going to probably hurt it. I'd like to see it be an actually good game too, because this could be a cheap cash grab from Bandai Namco. It could be buggy, it could be bad, it could be short. All of those are a possibility. They're gonna triple dip, apparently, according to Gamatsu, with El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron coming to Switch. Details to be announced on April 28th. So that's an announcement for an announcement. Being a kind of odd art style in the first place, it'll probably look as good as it did on the Xbox 360 on the Switch. I feel like there is a real chance here that the El Shaddai series may try to actually be a series and have a sequel, considering how it ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. But either they're going to try and make a spiritual sequel and not a direct sequel, or they're going to try to make a direct sequel. Who owns this is the real question. It was originally released in 2011, so you're talking 11-year-old game trying to continue a series. And that might be a great indication of just how far we're going back now to make continuations, remasters, reboots. If we're going back 11 years, we may work our way back to through all of history to the point where every game is open for discussion for making a sequel. Developer Crim is the name of the developer, so they seem to be only known for El Shaddai and nothing else. In fact, they don't even seem to have a Wikipedia entry. Yeah. Yeah, there's not even a Wikipedia entry coming up as far as the developer Crim, C-R-I-M. So they may very well, as the developer, have nothing else to rely on, and in over 11 years now, they haven't made another game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they've been secretly acting as a support company for other companies, but that doesn't build up their business name and their credibility. And that was the last Gematsu article. We have a game on Steam here called The Forgotten Isles. It's another one of these floating island platforming games, I assume. $2.99. They're comparing it to both Mirror's Edges. I think it's kind of unfair to put Mirror's Edge Catalyst, which has 6,987 reviews, to the original Mirror's Edge, which has 24,871 reviews. Both of them are very positive. This may be an indication that, wow, that came out in 2020? Wow, that game was practically brand new by my standards. Well, this came out in 2009. I would still very much say play the original Mirror's Edge and don't play Catalyst. Or play Catalyst and then play the original Mirror's Edge and pretend like this is the newer, better version of it, if you're going to do both. But honestly, I don't think after playing Catalyst you would want to play the original Mirror's Edge, so you're probably better off just playing the original Mirror's Edge. It's a bad comparison. I don't know why. I look at the number of hours too. I spent only 23 hours in Mirror's Edge. It must have been a very short experience then. Whereas I nearly spent 200 hours leaving it paused, I imagine most of the time, in Catalyst. But that sucks that you have these kind of asset flip platforming games and they're pretending like that's anywhere close to the amount of effort and polish that Ubisoft did for making the Mirror's Edge games. Even Mirror's Edge Catalyst is several categories better than something like The Forgotten Isles. Let's see, moving on, we have, it looks like maybe a Japanese puzzle game, collection of puzzle games, maybe a Chinese game, doesn't support English, Korean. Alright, so a collection of Korean, collection of puzzle games in Korean. I can't do anything with that, of course, so that can't go in the fall list. Here we have a game called Movie Quest, which does have public domain movies on screens, although it does feel like it's also an asset flip troll game, since they're showing a picture of somebody on the toilet as one of the screenshots. The frame rate looks like it's garbage. Arguably, you don't need a video game, though, to create a streaming service of public domain movies. In fact, probably you just go to YouTube to see public domain movies. And I assume any of the arcade games here are going to be garbage. This is a Flappy Bird clone arcade game. Let's see. What can we do? 27? We'll do that. Yeah, I don't really see a reason why you would want to simulate the theater experience in a non-VR way. Yes, I think we'll let me special summon this. Which then lets me do this and then this. Watching this video play on Movie Quest is obviously a joke game. And didn't. So yeah, I'm gonna say no to Movie Quest. Next, we have a game called Limit Escape Room Games, which looks like it's just an escape to room game. Looks a little asset flippy. Doesn't look very polished. So we can say no to that. We have about 20 more tabs. It's a long list. We have something called the Boot Camp, which looks like it's a first-person shooter of no real polish. So, nope to that. Chaos Survival. Looks like an asset flip first-person zombie shooter. So, no to that. Mana Chess. There might be something to this. There probably isn't anything to this, but frankly, I'm starting to get a little desperate to find anything even close to good enough to put on the follow list. We do generally want to see the follow list always grow. We don't want to see it just mess up completely or shrink down to nothing. It wouldn't really suck terribly if it did shrink down to nothing. It would just mean less work for me in the future, but it would also potentially imply that either no good games are getting made, which is hard to believe, or that that I have just raised my standards to such a high level that it's become ridiculous. But I don't want to raise my standards past what is reasonable for what I think an average gamer's standards would be. I don't want to become too much of a hater of games. Although, in general, a lot of video game people are eventually in that position where they hate a lot of games that as they come out. And that, some of that is kind of understandable too. Like, if you like the games that came out in 1983, if you like Super Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong, they don't make games like that anymore. So, yeah. It's not unnatural or wrong for people to grow out of a fandom. or just change and get older. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Battle Support, which doesn't look like much of anything. $5.99, claims to support 12 languages. Here we have a mixed reviewed Chinese mobile game port, almost certainly. Yep. I don't know why so many of these get made. Well, I do know why. It's just too long of a story. This is Chinese only, so we can obviously dismiss that. 1001 Black Raven Jigsaw Puzzle is another jigsaw puzzle game. I guess we did end up seeing 2 or 3 jigsaw puzzle games, which is probably about 2 too many. Here we have a solitaire game. Seems like every couple days you get a solitaire game and a couple jigsaw puzzle games. Obviously no to that also. This guy is still taking his time. Here we have a game called Magical Journey, which looks like it is a platforming fighting game of some sort. It feels like a mobile game, but I'm having a hard time figuring out if there's actual enemies here. Seems like the actual gameplay is just jumping and collecting coins for this entire trailer. This is not early access, it's free to play. Yeah, it definitely looks like a mobile game, but it must be so bad a mobile game. It has like 2 different currencies in it for a game that has no in-app purchases. This looks terrible. You know, I've never done the research, but it would be kind of interesting to find out how hard it is to move something from the programming languages of one of them is called Kotlin, and the other one I don't remember the name of, but the programming languages you use to program an app for Android or iPhone. Learning those programming languages, I wonder how hard it is to then move that code over to something that would compile and run even poorly on Windows. It might be very easy, it might be fairly hard, I don't know. Here's a game that's going to put you in an interesting position. I have one called Fursan Al Aqsa, the Knights of Al Aqsa Mosque. I probably didn't pronounce that correctly. It addresses the Israel x Palestine conflict from the Palestinian perspective, breaking the cliche of portraying Arabs as terrorists. You play in missions across Palestine with many objectives to accomplish epic battles, powerful guns, vehicles to drive, and more. So, the game is practically daring anyone to who criticizes it, because they'll just claim that they're being Islamic phobic if you do criticize it. In all fairness, Palestinians really, I don't think, have a lot of budget that they've put towards making video games or convincing the West that to side with Palestinians. So we haven't seen a lot of games like that. That being said, Israel would definitely call this terrorist propaganda because they only see Palestinians as terrorists. And personally, as someone who doesn't really have much of a dog in the fight, or any dog in the fight really, if these screenshots would load, I don't think this game looks good enough. I just don't think it has that visual polish. Yep. And that is very much in line with a lot of low effort first person military shooters. I would probably throw this game a bone and say this does feel like something where they actually are trying to make a game. Like, it doesn't look like they're just trying to make money from this. I just don't think there's enough polish. So I could be generous and say, all right, good effort here. But I would also say it's probably better if Palestinian game developers don't define their narrative and their story as just the perpetual ever struggle against Israel, even if that is the truth that they're living. They're probably better to not touch that narrative. Even Israelis and Palestinians should not touch that conversation in favor of making something better. It supports as languages English, Arabic, full Arabic, and subtitles for Portuguese in Brazil, but not interface for Portuguese, Brazil, and Chinese. The Portuguese language is an interesting choice there. I don't know the connection between Palestine and Portugal or Brazil, why that subtitle would be a pick. China is very close to Palestine, relatively speaking, so Chinese would make sense. Yeah. The problem definitely here is if this were a game made by somebody in the United States, highlighting the United States in a conflict that is messy, so Vietnam, for instance, it would probably go down like a lead balloon as much as this game probably would go down like a lead balloon. Like, it's just, when there aren't clear victors, it becomes harder for people to want to get aboard that kind of game. Yeah. So, while I would like to see more Middle Eastern games get made, I have to fall back to my problem that I've seen with other Middle Eastern games too, is that they often seem to be either obsessed with promoting or staying within Islam, because that is all an Islam person probably can do. I wouldn't be surprised if the religion specifically says in all actions it must be done in the effort to praise Allah, in the same way that the Christian Bible says in every thought, in every action, it must be done to promote Jesus and God and Yahweh. So there's always this kind of religious connection that I've seen so far in anything being made by a Middle Eastern Islamic country that makes the stories not fanciful, not fantasy based, not artistic really in any way. It is all a let's recreate things that actually happen. In all fairness, Activision has the same complaint around their Battlefield games. They're not telling a creative story when they make a Battlefield game. They are just recreating military conflicts. And I don't play Battlefield games either. When I want to play something that is even slightly militarized, the new Wolfenstein reboot is in the direction that I want to go, where it's loosely based on the idea of World War II Nazis being bad, but then it goes in a very crazy direction and it totally changes the timeline and gives them ridiculous weapons. Like, the step they could certainly go forward is just set it 20 years in the future, 100 years in the future. Like, if they wanted to tell this kind of story, set it so that your super soldiers with new technology and equipment, and heck, you even might go crazy enough to say that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has ended somehow, and think about what Palestine and Israel would look like 100 years in the future if they're not always fighting with each other, instead of just regurgitating the conflict over and over again. You cannot deny that there's a lot of anger and a lot of hurt feelings on both sides, and regurgitating the same narrative is going to just continue that anger and hurt feelings. And sometimes in conflicts it might be just a case in which talking about something else and dropping the subject for a while is the only way to move forward. For instance, in a comparison, on Reddit I saw that there was a claim that Japan says it's prepared for serious talks with Korea. Well, I don't know how that's going to go anywhere, because Koreans are rightfully so very mad at the things that the old Japan, the old government of Japan, did in World War II, and the current government of Japan is not willing to admit any guilt around that. So it's just the same arguments over and over again. At least those are the same arguments that showed up on Reddit. Perhaps the politicians actually can have some kind of high-level talks and find a way to work together in the aspects that they need to work together. And wow, we're delving deeper and deeper into politics. We need to move forward. Here we have a game called Fortress Building Puzzle, which looks like Tetris after Tetris had been built, and then you play Jenga with it. Seems like you're trying to get the fortress to collapse, not to get taller, which seems like the game would be fairly limited at that point. Yeah, it does kind of feel like Jenga in a virtual element, and arguably a virtual Jenga makes less of a mess than regular Jenga, so I could see an idea there, but the inconsistent shapes of Jenga and making it Tetris does something different, certainly. I just don't think there's enough of a game here. And you can see this is 84 cents, and then it's bundled with 30 other games for to bring it up to 15, 16. And yeah, that just doesn't feel big enough to waste your time on. Next we have a game on Steam called Duel, which looks like a platformer. Now in screenshot it doesn't look particularly good, but it might have this kind of Yoshi's Woolly World yarn aesthetic to it in movement. It looks like you're moving kind of slow though. I wouldn't be surprised if the Yoshi games actually move pretty slow too. Yeah, you can see this yarn in the clouds in the background. It looks like it's a mobile game. Look, with the buttons on the side. So I'd have to assume it's a mobile game port. I'd have to assume it's not much. I'll be generous and assume that El Mundo de Dandy, which is apparently the full title, means something different in that language, in Spanish, than just calling somebody a dandy, which is a slur for people who are gay. Although frankly, dandy could come back into the common vernacular and it wouldn't even be a problem, because I don't think that many people would even remember or care that it was a slur. Like, there's much bigger insult words that have come and gone and replaced it. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Enemy Engaged Desert Operations, which looks like garbage. $8.49, English, allegedly full audio. That's going to be a no. Here we have a game called Tournament of Beans, which looks like it's hand-drawn and not that good looking. It's free, so I guess the price is right. But it kind of feels like it's just a Smash Brothers clone where you're gonna have to... Okay. See if we can do Monster Reborn now. 28. Alright, let's see if this is mirror reflection. We have 4 more games that have come out over the past week, over the weekend, and then 2 GameDeveloper.com articles, and then the follow list coming up, and then we'll be done for today. And since I took a break in the middle here, we're moving fairly fast. Let's see, we have Mini Pipes, a logic puzzle pipes game. I am still looking for a good pipes game. This might be it as a single screen Unity game. It's minimalistic, certainly, but that's kind of what you could do with pipes. So I'll put that on the fall list. 59 cents, English, Spanish, Portuguese, Brazil. I feel like this used to say Portuguese. No. It used to say Spain, Spanish, or Spanish, Spain. And then there is also Portuguese, Brazil. And then there is also Brazilian, Brazil, or Portuguese, Portugal. Yeah. Moving on, we have a game called Crazy Lift. Looks like it's a game where you control a forklift. It looks like one of these games where you simulate doing somebody's job, so I wouldn't be interested in that. $7.99, English and Italian. Both languages allegedly fully voiced. I doubt it. This does not look particularly interesting. Plus, I pretty much have a blanket rule against not playing games that simulate jobs. Here we have a game called Simultaneous Control. There's a part in Ni no Kuni where you have to control 2 things at the same time, and I am awful at it. I just cannot do that accurately. In particular, you have to control people while they're about to fall off platforms that are collapsing. That's what makes it really difficult. I could possibly play a game like this. I don't want to play a game like this because it looks hideous, but I might be able to play something like that. Animal Shelter. Very positive. I'm going to click on this. This is on the follow list. Well, yeah, that looks good. Is this early access? I will just preemptively go ahead and put Animal Shelter on the wish list, since it is rated very positively. This is perhaps me making an exception to a game that simulates doing somebody's job, but I do like animals, and I did briefly, a long time ago, about a decade ago, fantasize about owning an animal shelter or working at an animal shelter. I'm sure pretty much everybody has thought about it for a brief time. Although in all fairness, if I really was going to work at an animal shelter, I probably would be very upset with the owners of the animals a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised um, if the actual work kind of sucked too. Like I actually wouldn't want to work at a shelter per se. I'd want to work at a doggy cat, a pet daycare, and there's a difference there. Certainly, daycares aren't going to have to deal with sick or rabid animals. They're not going to be killing animals. They're not going to have you're not going to have a lot of sick or injured animals in a daycare at a pet care center. We'll summon this in the hopes that this works. Although I don't think anything is going to work. You can't actually attack and kill anything either. The last game we have coming out here is Duels, which is a Viking-themed game. I feel like I've seen a different version of this. This looks fairly nicely polished. Let's see. $7.19, perhaps a little too expensive. Single player with online PvP. English, Danish, Norwegian, and Russian. I think you have different pieces and they move down the line, fighting each other one by one. Honestly, this was probably something that should have been a mini game inside of a bigger Viking themed game, but that's not enough to make me really skip it. So I am going to put this on the follow list. I think that's about as much as I want to show today. We need 9,500 roughly. So just about 20 victories still to get up and to the maximum reward. I have 3 days to do it, so I just have to stop playing Ni no Kuni completely and play this. And that may mean not spending any time doing the ranked play. If I need another 30,000 damage to get 50 gold, and I need to destroy 13 more opponents, monsters on their field to get 50 gold. So it really wouldn't be a big deal to not get these two rewards if I was going to miss out on anything, and it wouldn't be a huge deal to miss some of these daily rewards. But I probably should play a little bit of ranked to try and get them, but I'm going to have to prioritize here and do first things first. The good news is we now finally have this. So we can open 2 packs. And we will have 63 days left to open 2 packs. The number of cards I own already is actually very small. Well, there's actually very few cards anyways. There's only 20 in this pack. So they might as well have just given you 3 copies of all these cards. Because what's going to happen is almost certainly you will get 3 copies of each of these cards. But maybe not because of the way this is all going to boil down. What's going to happen though is I'm going to open this. And because I only opened 2, maybe that lowers our chances of getting an ultra rare. But it's going to give me a key, I bet, to a secret pack. So 2 new cards, no key. I find that actually surprising. I guess the way this will boil down is I need to open a 10 pack of them so I can get the super rare, ultra rares, to then get a key to get a secret pack, to then open the secret packs to get those cards. Yeah, it does feel like I'm gonna get screwed out of something though, or that the odds of getting screwed out of something is pretty high. Meanwhile, there is nothing else to see, so when I exit back to the main menu, this should no longer have the exclamation point. Yep. And then solo. There's really no telling. There's a gate here, so almost certainly there is more single player content for me to play, and I just need to find some free time to do that. And I haven't done that. Let's see. Yeah, and there's not actually any Humble Bundle news story. I may need to run the macro a second time, because we had already talked about Humble laying off its employees in an e-commerce restructuring. This is not Humble Bundle, this is Humble Game Developer, which they split off. And then we've got some follow list games to consider. Rodent Warriors here, I think we can say no to. Came out in January of 2020 and doesn't have any relevancy. We have one that is positive. What is it? Side-scrolling shooter game. Rocketron. I kind of feel like I want to say no to this. Just doesn't look visually polished enough to make me want to play it. It's not like I know this publisher, this developer. Yeah. Looks like there would be a little bit too much frustration platforming or precision platforming for my skill level and my arthritis in my hands these days to really go for this. So I'm gonna have to make a special exception here and say no to this, despite it meeting the relevancy issues. I don't know really why this would have been on the follow list anyways. I obviously, had I had the emotional energy when I first saw this, would have said no to it. I should have said no to it. Here we have something called Rocket Rumble from August 2021, which it doesn't have any relevancy, so that can go away. Only 4 user reviews. Rockaball VR Bowling from 2019. I think at this point I am willing to roll the dice. I'm fairly certain that there is a better VR bowling game than this, or a more recent one, so I'm gonna say no to this. I'm gonna move it. There's not anything special happening here. You can barely even see the pins. I guess that might be one of the problems of bowling in general, is that if you have poor eyesight, you may not see the pins down the long lane. Let's see, Rocco's Island, Ring to End the Pain. This is 2022, so I'll give this more time, but it's probably going to the wish list. Robotics Notes Elite is a visual novel. Yep. Doesn't have full audio. It doesn't have full Japanese. That is something I think I would also have enjoyed in Ni no Kuni, is if it just had the Japanese talking. I should probably try and see if I could turn on the spoken Japanese and see if the game changes anything then. It would be weird, certainly, to 30 hours into the game change to Japanese, but if all of a sudden the vast majority of the dialogue was spoken out in Japanese, just hearing the speaking while reading along I think would interest me. This is from Spike Chunsoft. I think This might be a spin-off of kind of some well-received visual novels out there. I think this has to go on the wish list. Of course, the problem that you're going to run into here is I don't know how many visual novels I'd really play, but that is a decision and a thought for later. For now, if it looks good enough to make it to the wish list, if it meets that level of quality, put it on the wish list. That doesn't mean I inherently have to ever buy it, and I very possibly may never buy it. Don't get incredibly fooled by these intro animations, which look nice, certainly, because that's not what the actual game is going to be like. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Robotic Learn, which came out in 2020, and yep, it has 9 reviews, so it's not relevant. Also doesn't look particularly that good. I definitely am raising my standards, and obviously we're going through the games that start with R. So Robot Labs Remake came out in 2021. It doesn't visually look that good. Feels like what it's trying to do is make a Portal game, or something like a Portal game, but it looks pretty terrible. Oddly, they're comparing it to Mirror's Edge again. Let's see. They're also bundling with a game called Two Guys, One Cabin, Arctic Boy Stories, and Robot Labs Remake. Yeah. It is a Portal game, and I kind of would like a Portal game. Somebody to try to make a Portal game. I just don't think this is the guy that's going to do it. You know what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to make an exception and just leave this on the follow list to think about it for some more next time. Next time I get around the follow list cleanup. Because, yeah, I might be, a year from now, so desperate that I would play somebody else's take on a Portal game. Because, like I said earlier, we're probably never going to see Portal 3. Next, we have a game on Steam called RoboQuest from 2020. It is early access by the tags, and still early access now. So, it's a shame because it's kind of pretty. It's got an art style, cartoony kind of Borderlands art style to it. It's single player with online co-op. But I think I have to say no, because this feels like this would be abandoned. And let's see, all-time peak was 620. The peak today was 95. Like, playing online is going to be fairly small. So, yeah. If they had brought it out of early access, I would have considered it. But they didn't. Next, we have Robonauts, which has a lot of trailers. And after the 5th or 6th trailer, the screenshots want to load. I thought I had fixed this, but not so much. Shoot through storms of weird and funny creatures, jump between planets by switching gravities, and relive childhood from one of your very first arcade shooters, it says. So I feel like it's trying to be something like Mario Galaxy with shooting. Which, it's crazy that they made Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 and made that whole gravity mechanic, and then Nintendo really didn't do anything more with it after that as a gimmick. And I guess that's true for a lot of the 3D Mario games, is that they introduce a gimmick, play with it for 1 or 2 games at most, and then they abandon it. You would almost expect there to be a gravity level in Odyssey, and maybe there is a gravity level in Odyssey. I know there's got to be some things like that, come to think of it, in Odyssey, but they kind of get mixed into the salad, as it were, instead of being the unique gameplay mechanic that you're showing off. And I don't even know what the unique gameplay mechanic of Odyssey would have been, other than possessing people's hats or people possessing animals and controlling them. I guess that was the gimmick in that. Do I think this game is worth putting in the wish list, though, is the question. And I think no, it isn't. It doesn't have that relevancy. Again, there's so many games like this that just kind of never catch people's attention. They don't have the advertising budget that games need to even get people to write articles about them and talk about them, or to get streamers to play them. And I honestly don't really have a solution. If I was to make a video game and put it on Steam, I would try to throw as much advertising money as possible in front of streamers and YouTubers, and it would be something like Raid Shadow Legends or something where you're just gonna try and sponsor anybody and everybody to get the game in front of people's eyes, and it probably still wouldn't really work. As for this game, Robo Revenge Squad, see, it looks like it's a player versus player Mario Party type fight game, so I'm gonna say no to that. Also, it's early access, as I scroll down and take notice of that. So early access from 2019 definitely means it should go. I have 48 more new tweets. So let me scroll down my Twitter here. Here's a question. If I go, what was that all about? If I go ahead and do this, and I don't have a requirement to spectate, will it give me any kind of review? Or reward, not a review. Because I should have been doing this whole time, come to think of it. Yeah, every time I scroll down my Twitter feed, I should spectate a game, and anytime I anticipate that I'm gonna stop playing, I should spectate a game just to make footage. That gives me a great excuse to stop talking and still have visual footage and be a better, have more to show. I don't know if that's really being a better content creator, showing somebody else playing a game, but it probably is at some level. Well, I guess let's see, how am I gonna do this? I'm having a real hard time, like, with Twitter showing an embedded video on top of an embedded link. Yeah, Twitter shouldn't be complicated to use, and yet I have found a way to make it, to struggle with it there. Okay, yeah. I think I've gotten all the news. There's a couple games that have come out since we started streaming. We'll talk about those on Friday. I'll let this play through. Like, so yeah, I don't think you get a reward when you do that if you just spectate. The reward is knowledge and knowledge alone. And yeah, we're very close to being done with the battle pass with 58 days left. Okay. So as far as new news, not breaking news that Johnny Depp is going to take a stand in the $50 million defamation trial. Although that might really affect some of the Pirates of the Caribbean and, well, most of the Pirates of the Caribbean games that should exist. The Deadline has an article here. A Streets of Rage film is in the work, and Sonic's DJ2 Entertainment and Escape Artists to produce video game adaptations scripted by John Wick's Derek Kolstad. The actual story behind Streets of Rage, I couldn't even really tell you. I think like the governor, the mayor's daughter or something gets kidnapped in the first Streets of Rage and they go on this fighting mechanic. I wouldn't be surprised if it really is just a case that these are bad guys fighting on the other bad guys on the street. You could really do anything and call it a Streets of Rage game. Just try to have the right color people, for lack of a better term. Like, don't turn this character, who is probably beloved amongst Streets of Rage fans, into a man. Don't turn this character into a woman. Same thing. Don't whitewash a character's skin tone. That's about all they would have to do, in my mind, and then they could give them any personality and any story, and people would probably be fine with it. YouTube gaming still not really, I think, doing a great job on Twitter. They put out a tweet saying, "Not all heroes wear capes, some have pots on their heads. Hashtag let me solo her," which that's some YouTuber trying to beat the entire game of Elden Ring while wearing just a pot on their head and nothing else. Trying to do everything solo and everything as difficult as possible. And people have been talking about that, but I don't know if that's a particularly big deal. Darwinia had its 100,000th or 10,000th person win the game, which Darwinia is a particularly old game. So they're claiming to have released a fully remastered version of Darwinia. But the thing about Darwinia, though, and I know this is blurred out, so it's kind of hard to tell, is that the graphics were always intentionally very low res. So remastering it visually would be breaking the artistic style of the game. Honestly, through the blur, this does not look any different than the Darwinia I've played in the past. But maybe they've polished the resolution or polished the engine. It would be a very easy game to improve upon. Just run on a newer engine and on more modern hardware. So, yeah. I guess if you want to get back, if you want to play Darwinia again, now would be the time. Video Games Chronicles has a review for the Playdate saying the Playdate is fun, but its quirks may wind you up. Giving it a 3 out of 5. I didn't even know Video Games Chronicles had a star system because I don't look at their reviews. Don't really care about their reviews, even if hardware. The Playdate is not a good piece of equipment, not a good piece of hardware. I would argue it's probably going to end up as e-waste in most cases. People are going to get bored of it and throw it away. It was a gimmick from the word go. It was not powerful enough or complicated enough to be even a small gimmick product. Like, from my perspective, the least complicated, least quality product that is worth buying is probably something like an NES Mini that emulates a good amount of games and has a full D-pad and A, B, start, select, but also has that nostalgia factor. If you're going anything lower than that, if you were to try to bring back Tamagotchis or make like some kind of educational toy, which is what they tried to sell this as, also, it's just not going to catch on. It's not going to be good enough quality. It's not going to be relevant in a year or two. On top of all the problems that this would have had it come out perfectly on time with a lot of hype around it, it still wouldn't have sold well. This was, of course, delayed because of the pandemic and doesn't really have enough room in it, I think, to put a real game. It doesn't have any real games on it. And in the other news, and this will be two sites that I probably should clean up. The Hollywood Reporter is saying Jason Momoa is going to star in a Minecraft movie for Warner Brothers. The Napoleon Dynamite filmmaker Jared Hess will direct. Okay. So that's perhaps a little too muscly for a Minecraft Steve. I assume he's playing Steve and not Alex. Maybe he's just going to voice Steve and do a voice. And it's going to be animated, maybe not. Otherwise, I wouldn't be surprised what they're going to try and do here is have Jason Momoa in a world like a Minecraft world just trying to survive. So that they might make creepers, for instance, look very creepy, like monsters. And they might turn it into kind of a survival horror movie and just call it Minecraft. Or, they could go the comedy route and have actual actor Jason Momoa sucked into the Minecraft world and have to survive there. And then you could play off that comedy aspect. That would be the best thing I think you could do with him, is this, hey, I'm a rich actor and muscle man, and now I'm in this sort of Minecraft world, and I'm going to have to figure out how things go. Almost certainly Jason Momoa has some kids or nieces or nephews that play Minecraft, and so he said yes to this without probably caring too much about it. Of course, these kinds of movie announcements don't mean anything. Like, it's a long way from announcing that a movie has been green light or is in pre-production versus a movie has been released and actually is in theaters. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. Hopefully that stuttering was just a weird, random thing. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.